Welcome to Christ and Culture. Today, we're going to be discussing God's Not Dead, a Christian drama film about a college student who must defend his faith to an atheist college professor. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. First, let's talk about the main characters. You've got Josh Wheaton, the college student who's also an evangelical Christian, Professor Jeffrey Radisson, Josh's atheist philosophy instructor, Reverend Dave, the pastor of St. James Church, Amy Ryan, an atheist blogger, Aisha, a Muslim student, Mina, Radisson's evangelical Christian girlfriend, Mark, an atheist businessman who is Mina's older brother and Amy's boyfriend, Martin, a Chinese foreign exchange student and Josh's friend. From now on to the plot. Josh enrolls in Professor Radisson's introductory philosophy course and faces a challenge to his beliefs when Radisson requires everyone to write "God is dead" on a sheet of paper and sign it in order to pass the class. Josh refuses, and Radisson proposes that if Josh can prove that God is not dead, he won't fail the class. In Radisson's personal life, his girlfriend Mina is an evangelical Christian, and the cracks are beginning to show in their relationship due to their clashing religious beliefs. Mina's brother Mark is a corporate executive, and he's in a relationship with Amy. He breaks up with her when she tells him that she has cancer. Mark and Mina's mother has dementia meanwhile, and while Mina visits often, Mark rarely does. There's also Aisha, who converts from Islam to Christianity, despite her strict father being a devout Muslim. And Reverend Dave is struggling with his own faith and sense of purpose as a friend, a pastor from a church overseas, comes to town to visit. The main conflict for the entire movie is the choice between accepting Jesus as the Savior or not. In each of the individual situations that the main characters find themselves in, they must entertain a question of faith. Josh must decide whether he should take the easy road by signing off on something that goes against his convictions. He's also in a conflict with his girlfriend, who relentlessly encourages him to acquiesce to Radisson's terms so that he can avoid failing the class. She wants Josh to prioritize her and their relationship over his principles and God. Her attitude towards the whole situation surprised me. She's supposed to be a Christian, but she needs to do some work on herself. She's extremely selfish. She claims to be looking out for her and Josh's relationship, but really, I think that she actually has her sights on making sure that Josh is successful, only because she feels that her destiny is linked with his. She has a grand plan, and she's more than willing to cast Josh off to the side if he doesn't conform to it. She doesn't seem to care about Josh or even God. Mina is in conflict with her boyfriend Radisson and his atheism. She loves him, but he doesn't respect her beliefs, and she loves God more. Amy seems to be in conflict with everyone, her boyfriend Mark, Christians, even her own body. Radisson is in conflict with Christianity at large, Josh and Mina. Mark is in conflict with Amy and Mina. Aisha is in conflict with her father and Islam. The resolution to all of the conflicts, the resolution that the filmmakers prescribe, is to remain loyal to Christ and seek Him during times of adversity, even if it means leaving behind the ones you love. The film was considered a box office success, earning $65 million worldwide against a $2 million budget. Despite the film's success in theaters, it received mostly negative reviews from critics. That being said, I tend not to give a lot of weight to critics. Take Titanic, for example. It received negative reviews when it was first released in 1997, but it went on to become one of the most successful films of all time. People loved it so much that they kept going back to theaters over and over again to see it multiple times. The movie ended up staying in theaters for 6 months because it kept making money. By the way, 6 months was a very long time for a film to be in theaters back then. I can't be certain, but it seemed like the average for films back then was about 3 months, and most of the time people didn't go back to see the same movie over and over again, like they did with Titanic. Also, the film ended up winning a bunch of Oscars in 1998, so critics' opinions don't always line up with what the public values in a film. In the case of God's Not Dead, critics overwhelmingly disliked the film. On Rotten Tomatoes, it only received 12% positive reviews based on 26 reviews, with an average rating of 3.4 out of 10. The consensus there is that the film uses sledgehammer tactics of delivering its message with a dose of good faith. They also say that the film makes for bad drama and an unconvincing argument for the unconverted. Writing for Vox, Alyssa Wilkinson argues that the film presents a narrative based on a Christian persecution complex in the United States. Christian persecution complex is a belief that Christian values and Christians are being oppressed by social groups and governments. Some Christian journalists point out that American Christians have a persecution complex, while the persecution of Christians is real in some parts of the world, including areas in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. In The Atlantic, Emma Green criticizes the film's perpetuation of the stereotype that colleges are atheist factories. Several Christian organizations have endorsed the film, including the Alliance Defending Freedom, American Heritage Girls, Trevecca Nazarene University, the Dove Foundation, and Ratio Christi. There's also been some criticism from Christians. Michael Garson, an op-ed columnist for the Washington Post and an evangelical, wrote, "The main problem with God's Not Dead is not its cosmology or ethics, but its anthropology. It assumes that human beings are made out of cardboard. Academics are arrogant and cruel. Liberal bloggers are preening and snarky. Unbelievers disbelieve because of personal demons. It is characterization by caricature." While preparing for this review, a video titled "Why Christian Movies Are Bad: The Problem with Christian Media" showed up in my recommended videos on YouTube. The timing of this video showing up in my account could not have been more perfect. The video does a much better job than I can of articulating exactly why so many Christian movies are bad. I've linked the video in the description. According to Josh Keefe, the video's creator, Christian films are often executed poorly because the filmmaking process is rushed. Josh also argues that the films are Sunday sermons masquerading as movies and that they often aren't believable, particularly when it comes to their portrayal of atheists and Christian persecution. You see, many Christian films are made by preachers, not filmmakers, and the primary reason for making films is to spread their message. So really, the films are more akin to sermons than to movies in the traditional sense of the word. What I enjoy most about God's Not Dead is the very thing that many critics dislike about it. I like that it is a sermon of sorts because it is acted as a refresher for my faith and addressed some questions that I've had. I didn't find that the plot was too formulaic, but maybe I just haven't seen enough Christian films to be able to recognize similarities in the plot structures. I genuinely wanted to know what was going to happen to the characters. Don't get me wrong, I did have an idea of how the movie might end, and I wasn't too far off, but I wanted to know how we would get there. It's kind of like with Christmas movies, you know how it's going to end, but you still want to come along for the ride to see how it happens. I think that God's Not Dead was made to try to at least get people to consider that God is real. It would be somewhat naive to believe that one movie alone would cause someone to become a believer, but maybe it could succeed in making someone think about it, which could generate dialogue that could possibly lead to conversion. I believe the film was also made to help reinforce the faith of people who are already believers. Being a believer doesn't mean that doubts about God are banished forever. Sometimes they creep in, and that's perfectly normal. What God's Not Dead does, at least for me, is address doubts and provides information and biblical sources that can help cast aside those doubts. While God's Not Dead might not be everyone's cup of tea, I think that you can enjoy it, especially if you do approach it as if it's a sermon, and you recognize that as the purpose of the film. While I don't think the film will actually convert many, if any, non-believers, I think that it could cause people to begin thinking about things, and it could push some who are on the fence closer to following Jesus. I recommend God's Not Dead if you're in the mood for a good Christian narrative. Remember, this film was likely written with the intention of being a sermon, not a cinematic masterpiece or purely for entertainment purposes. It's not going to hit the same as your average Hollywood blockbuster, and you will probably be most likely to enjoy it if it reinforces what you already believe as a Christian. If you really like it and you want more, there are 3 sequels: God's Not Dead 2, released in 2016, God's Not Dead, A Light in Darkness, released in 2018, and God's Not Dead, We the People, released in 2021. That's all for now. I'll see you next time. Until then, be blessed.